Our podcast lead presenter David Balkwell has 30 years of certification assessment experience and has undertaken over 7,000 days of certification assessment. He worked full-time for BSI as operations manager for 10 years before setting up his own business carrying out independent certification assessment over the last 20 years with 19 accredited certification bodies. ISO Builder is a registered trademark of Balkwell Limited. All online content is protected by international copyright and the Trademarks Act 1994. ISO Builder Online is not responsible, liable, nor necessarily support views as expressed by our podcast presenters in any way. They are their own interpretation and views. We accept no liability for any content. Patrons should always source confirmatory opinions regarding interpretations of management systems in relation to their own situation and intended use. No content is intended to be offensive in any way.
What are the differences between ISO 45001 and OHSAS18001? Well, primarily the introduction of Annex SL, a common structure, a high-level structure, which has 10 clauses, applies to the requirements of ISO 9001 and ISO 14001. The 10 clauses that are contained within Annex SL are the scope, normative references, terms and definitions, context of the organisation, leadership, planning, support, operation, performance evaluation and improvement. And the opportunity, of course, for an ISO 45001 management system that embeds these 10 clauses and the expectations of Annex SL being common, allow for independence but common across multiple systems, or to promote the benefits of integration across quality, environment and health and safety. So what's new from OHSAS 18001? Well, there are several key changes between 18,000 and 45,000 in regards to structure. Overall, the purpose of the standards remained the same. In regards to the structure, some key changes have been made, however. The new standard provides additional focus on the process approach and clarifies why it's essential to implement it throughout the organisation. The process approach has been common in management systems for quality and for environment for many years now, and builds on the principles of input, process and output. So looks for you to determine processes that are required to satisfy ISO 45001, but you could adopt something which you may have already considered for quality and for environment, such as process mapping or flow charting or something similar that builds on the simplicity and the intent of the process approach, such that we identify the inputs, what's actually taking place, and outputs, so inputs, process and outputs. Next, the commitments remain or are maintained the same, but there are strengthenings within the basic concepts in 45001. There are new specific requirements of top management in terms of demonstrating leadership, commitment and encouraging a positive occupational health and safety culture throughout the organisation. ISO 45001 has more documentation flexibility, which is useful. Emphasis is also put on the importance of the hierarchy of controls. Now, this is quite an important change. The wording has been expanded from 18,000 into clause 812 in 45,000, and essentially covers the 5 controls. Eliminate the hazard, substitute with less hazardous processes, operations, materials or equipment. Use engineering controls or reorganisation of work. Use administrative controls including training, and use adequate personal protective equipment. Whereas simple words were just emphasised in 18,000, a little bit more explanation is now given within 812 in ISO 45000. So also what's a difference between the two is a proactive strategic approach now. So that aligns much more with quality management, environmental management and now occupational health and safety management. ISO 45001 focuses on identifying controlling risks rather than hazards, as was required in OHSAS18001. The major key changes are really risk-based thinking, interested parties, and implications. Some terminology changes also have been incurred in 45,000, which we'll talk about later. I think risk-based thinking is clearly one of the core changes in ISO 45001 and embeds the expectations, as does 9000 and 14000, in the determination and linkage between the organisational scope, context, interested parties, the needs and expectations of interested parties, and then risk and opportunity. So it isn't until we actually get into clause 6 where it pulls the requirements of all those together through 4.1, 4.2, 4.3 to allow an organisation to be in a position where it can start to think about a model or a methodology which helps determine risks and opportunities. Having visibility of those risks and opportunities allows for management and mitigation. Of course, as with quality and environment, the intent is that that's a live and dynamic process that's allowing risk management to be embedded into the organisation. So with respect to health and safety, this is key, because having removed the requirements for preventive action and increased the emphasis in risk-based thinking, that's removed an element of the check in plan, do, check and act, and increased the emphasis in plan through risk-based thinking. So, not forgetting the needs and expectations of workers and other interested parties such as customers, visitors, shareholders, neighbours, regulators, emergency services, and of course interested parties would be determined by an organisation and will be unique to a particular organisation and to a particular location. And the purpose of the determination of these interested parties is to be in a position where you can understand the needs and expectations of those interested parties. There are a number of tools that are used within ISO 9001 and ISO 14001 to gather that information, such as baseline reviews, SWOT and PESTLE. Whatever way you determine the information gathering is entirely up to you, providing that it's a sufficient and robust process that helps you build on risk-based thinking, understanding your risks, and of course wherever there may be risks there may also be risks and opportunities. So to build on that, it's good to understand what an organisation's health and safety risks and opportunities are. With regards to legal and other requirements, the concept has been retained from OHSAS 18001 through to ISO 45001. So unlike ISO 14001, which has changed its approach to terminology being compliance obligation, through ISO 45001, legal and other requirements has been retained, the principle of. Other requirements, of course, being things, in this case for health and safety, where an organisation has chosen to adopt something which could be would not necessarily be a legal obligation, an act or a regulation, but something which the organisation has chosen to commit to. And if that's the case, then the expectation is that the organisation would follow the process of legal and other requirements in keeping abreast and aware of what those other requirements are and treating them as though they were a piece of legislation, and also ensuring commitment from policy through to legal and other requirements management into embedding within risk assessment and also out of risk assessment into operational controls, and beyond operational controls, legal and other requirements into evaluation of compliance. So the alignment of legal and other terminology has been retained as it was in OHSAS 18001. With regards to leadership, there's been an increased emphasis on leadership of the company to become engaged in and be responsible for the management system for it to be more effective. So thinking about any other key areas that have changed, worker consultation is quite a big area and has changed in ISO 45001, and as we've already explained, risk hierarchy controls have also changed, allowing for some more detail in the wording and the expectations around in that area. So some terminology that's changed. Certainly there are three key definitions. Worker, persons performing work or work-related activities under the control of the organisation. This means that it can be paid or unpaid, regular or temporary workers, includes workers from external providers, contractors, individuals, and situations where the organisation has some degree of control over the workers, such as maybe agency workers. The workplace, a place under the control of the organisation where a person needs to be or to go by reason of work. And contractor, external organisation providing services to the organisation at a workplace in accordance with agreed specifications, terms and conditions. Services may include construction activities. So those are the key changes in definitions. There are some others that you mustn't forget, but go back into the standard and have a look at those. Regarding interested parties, which of course would be new and not in 18,000, the term documented information combining document control and records control, top management, person or group of people who direct and control an organisation at the highest level, injury and ill health, competence, and occupational health and safety management system and policy. So I'd go back into the standard and look at those definitions just to refresh your mind. But those are the key areas, differences that are between OHSAS 18001 and ISO 45001. Of course, within the short discussion period, we can't cover areas in extreme detail or understand exactly how you intend to apply the requirements of ISO 45001 to your particular organisation, but I hope that session has highlighted some of the key areas.
ISO Builder Online, quality information for quality managers. ISO Builder is a registered trademark of Balkwell Limited. All online content is protected by international copyright and the Trademarks Act 1994. ISO Builder Online is not responsible, liable, nor necessarily support views as expressed by our podcast presenters in any way. They are their own interpretation and views. We accept no liability for any content. Patrons should always source confirmatory opinions regarding interpretations of management systems in relation to their own situation and intended use. No content is intended to be offensive in any way. Balkwell Limited, Management Systems Consultancy Audit and Training. Contact us by email, davidbalkwell@balkwellltd.com or office@balkwellltd.com. Established in 1999.